Nana Parimala Jagesh, the founder of Alamirak Nutrition, that is just a title. But beyond that, I'm an extremely proud mom of two sons and a grandmom of a wonderfully naughty 5-year-old grandson. I would love to just jump into a small flashback. Academic certificates, all that is secondary, but every human being has their own priorities in life, which I'm lucky never changed for me right from the time I was a kid. My priorities in life is obviously family, friends, books, and then the rest of the world. I think this love for books was completely like if it is nature versus nurture, I think my dad, he gave me one of the best gifts any kid in this world can receive. That is the gift of loving to read books. So I was never a kid who was lonely. Imagine uh, just going into the world of Enid Blyton, going into the world of such a fancy fairy tale world. On one end of the spectrum, Dad always ensured that I read all genres of books. So, yes, Amarshita Kathas on one hand, Enid Blyton on the other, and in between, all the other books which was there. Plus, I had to ace in my studies. Otherwise, those days, corporal punishment was very common. Dad would just give me one whack if I don't get good marks. So, this was the atmosphere I was born into. And when I was all of 14 years in the ninth grade, I met a person who I never knew was going to be my life partner. It was just a friendship. But by the time I was in 10th grade, that was 15 years old, fell in love and absolutely no common sense. Yes, I did not think he was still a student and did not think how he's going to take care of me. Is he financially stable? Nothing. It was just a call of the heart. I felt, yes, he's going to be the right partner for me. And the only one thing I asked him, he proposed to me, he asked me, will you marry me? I just asked him, will you make me study? Little did the poor guy know what he's letting himself for. I was in my 10th grade. So he'd have thought, like all normal women, she just wants to finish her 12th grade, maximum a degree, and that's it. And he said, yes, please go ahead. You can study all you want. And today, it is almost 37 years since we are married. Just last year, I picked up one more certificate, ACE certificate of weight management specialist. The reason being, people always ask me, how do you manage the family? How do you manage your career? How do you manage to study? It's just love, the passion for books. And there is nothing in this world which can stop you when you really love something. I also happen to be from a movie background because my husband has been in the sandalwood industry as an artist, director, producer from the last 40 years. Now, in the movie field, we have something called genres. I'm sure all of us know. So, either it can be a mass movie or a class movie. And otherwise, it's very simple. When they ask you one line, they say, that's a drama. That's a action movie. That's a comedy. So we are so used to this genre in movies. Similarly, when it comes to books, unknowingly, depending on the mood which I'm in when I enter a bookstore, I either veer towards the non-fiction, or if I want something really a little calmer, I walk in towards the fiction. So yes, even in books, we have these genres, but what was very, very surprising and something which really caught my attention was the title, The Spiritual CEO. Where do I put this book into? I would love to meet the author we can discuss it directly and understand under what genre does this beautifully titled book come in. And I take it as a great honor and pleasure to talk to Mr. Prakash Sheshadri, the author of this book. So please, Mr. Prakash Sheshadri, let me know under what genre it comes. It's so interesting to read the title of your book.
Before I jump into talking about my book, I have to give you a round of applause for what you have really accomplished. I would say hats off. You really make every woman proud. And 8th of March, which we just crossed a month back, being International Women's Day, I'm very sure that we have an absolute role model who people can look up to. It's really a privilege meeting you on this platform. Typically, if you just look at the classification of this book, the publisher, they bring it under what is called as mind, body, soul, MBS category, which is what all leading publishers have. If you really look at how I went into starting this book, we all coming from this part of the world, which is India, which is spiritually deeply rooted into the scriptures, Vedas, and things like that. And one of the book that I'm very sure, even if you haven't read it in full, we would have surely been introduced is, which is part of Mahabharata, called the Gita. And in that, the Gita Charya in one of the places says, uh, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata. If you really look at that, many people have several interpretations, including some of the Vedic scholars who have spoken about this. They speak about when the Lord comes back as an avatar to destroy evil and restore dharma. But I have a slightly different interpretation, which became the basis for this book. If you really look at what he meant, in my view, is that in if you had looked at the 8 avatars which preceded this one, none of the avatars he had actually duplicated himself in terms of what he took. Each one was different. There were no commonalities between any of the 2 avatars. Everyone was, and of course, Lord Krishna was the Purna avatar, as they say. And I deeply meditated over it and then found out in my own internal calling that what he means is that he's not to come back as a Lord whom we can touch and feel and live with. And also, the number of asuras that I have to destroy now have become global. So I sort of summarize that in all probability, he's talking about duplicating himself through the hearts and minds of people who can influence the world. Because it is not about taking gun and shooting down people like what might have happened in the earlier 9 avatars. It's about killing. Here, it is not about killing. It is about change, transformation, and metamorphosis for the world to become a better place. And hence, in my view, if you look at the world today, the biggest change makers are corporate organizations. Whether you like it or not, we all live in a commercial material world. Every product service that we need has to come through one kind of a corporation or another, whether it's private, government, quasi-government, whatever it may be. And finally, all these, if you really look at the helm of affairs, there is one single person who sits at the top. Whichever post you call him by managing director, president, chairman, finally he's the CEO or the chief executive officer. And this one single person has an enormous influence, whether they have 10 people working for them, or you take some of the large enterprises where there are 200, 300, 400,000 working for them, or you take the head of the government, where about 130 crore people look up to the person who heads the government, who is the prime minister of this country. Which means instead of looking at bringing a change of destroying people and hoping that something good would come, would that be a better choice that you have a person who can influence, become a role model, who can just look beyond just the monetary aspect of running a business and becoming a role model of such a caliber that people would look at transforming themselves and ideally metamorphosize themselves into what the version of Lord Krishna would have been had they come here. This actually formed the basis of the book. In fact, when I constructed the book, I looked at the 9 avatars of the Lord, and I had built in 9 chapters and left the 10th chapter open. The 9 chapters goes through the various stages of the metamorphosis process of a CEO. If you look at today's world, specifically the post-COVID, it's still not post-COVID. We are still part of the COVID. Uh, Values have taken precedence over money. It's no more that I want to make money at any cost. Nowadays, people are looking at a collaborative world. They look at values. They look at something that would hold the world together. Dharma, after all, one of the definition is which that holds the universe together. And as part of the Dharma, you have the Swadharma, which Lord Krishna even speaks about, which I extensively quote in the book. Of course, my book is not only a compilation of Mahabharata. It has a lot of stories from other walks of life, including I borrowed from your favorite segment movies. One of the movie that I touched upon is the movie called 300, The Life of Spartans of the Greece. Everywhere there is something for us to learn to transcend just beyond monetary transactions in life. And if I'm going to sell this as a concept of only transforming people to be do-gooders, nobody is going to buy it. After all, we need to buy bread, butter, and maybe a cheese and a few more things thrown in. We need our comforts, we need our luxurious life, yet can we be grounded? And spiritual CEO exactly fills that gap of where you can balance both wings of your life, both the material dharma and the spiritual dharma, so that both work together in tandem. And this in fact formed the complete basis of the entire book. And I would love to have questions. If you have, we can use it to discuss further on this book.
That's an amazing concept. And I think one of the greatest contributions ever in the history of literature would be, as you rightly pointed out, our Bhagavad Gita. And to take the age old philosophy and to convert it into modernism, where, as you rightly pointed out, every single CEO, where, I would like to know, Mr. Prakash, now when we use the term, the spiritual CEO, one, it's sort of inbuilt, the minute you talk about a company, because the person, the CEO, is in charge of 10 people or 100 people or 200 people, the first thought automatically would be financial stability.
Correct.
But getting a spiritual aspect into it is something, again, post COVID, we are all understanding, grappling. Money is not everything. Money is something, but money is not everything. Do you feel that this book, the essence of this book, is limited only to people in the companies, or even normal people can grasp value from this book?
I remember reading a book almost 25, 30 years ago. The author had drawn a beautiful parallel to the question that you are asking 30 years later. He wrote a book called as You. That's all. It's a single word. And he says that every person in the world is a CEO by himself. And even if we take the Indian population of companies, it is said that one of the recent data that I read says that there are about 75 to 80 lakh CEOs in India alone of various degrees. Some could be sitting at the top of heading a 50,000 crore group. There could be a CEO who is just running a 5 crore group. There are about 75 to 80 lakh CEOs. And imagine each one of them is like a seed. If I were to ask a question, I'm very sure you will have a ready-made answer. Would you put the focus on the seed, or would you put focus on the tree which germinates after the seed? Obviously, the quality of the seed is important, because what you sow is what you reap. You can't put a mango, no sort of a seed and expect a jackfruit out of it. And many times people misunderstand that spiritual values typically means a defeatist mind. Not at all. Spiritual values actually means how to handle crisis, how to handle the biggest challenges of life. Some of the CEOs I have deeply worked with in coaching them, they all have the same kind of doubts what Arjun had, and he asked Lord Krishna. And Arjun here represents a CEO. Arjun was not a person of a defeatist nature. He is considered to be the valiant warrior. Even he had doubts when he had been confronted by his own uncles and grandfather and great grandfather. Likewise, a CEO in his journey to excel continuously, has several situations that he comes across which puts him in a piquant situation. He doesn't have answers. Many times, the board or the perceived world challenge is all about making money and money and money, quarter to quarter, P&L to P&L, balance sheet to balance sheet. And they actually, when I speak to them heart of heart, they don't mind making money, but they don't want to make money the way a machine would make. They want to make it like a human would make. And this is where a book like this would actually fit in. It's like a wake up call. You look at yourself, it's like someone holding a mirror in front of you. If you don't like what you see in a mirror, the challenge is not in the mirror, it's in the person who's looking into the mirror. And many times, many of the CEOs I have worked with, some of the top executives of very big corporations, they all finally say, Prakash, at the end of the day, if I don't have a peaceful sleep, what is the point in making money? And the peaceful sleep is not something that money can surely buy. All of us know happiness is not something that money can buy. Cooperation of team members is not something money can buy. I can throw millions at a person. If I still vacuum at the back and don't treat him as a human, he's not going to cooperate with me. This is something CEOs and top executives learn the hard way. In this book, we deal in detail with very simple concepts. What is spirituality? It's not about a particular religion or a particular sect or a particular way of worship we are talking about. Spirituality here, I have defined in one of the chapters as a very simple way of aligning my vision to a global vision so that all of us, Sarvojana Sukhino Bhavantu, as they say, all of us can lead a peaceful, happy life working towards our cherished aspirational goals. For that, somebody needs to hold the torch. Many efforts have been made in the past, but either they have been too oriented towards spirituality where there is nothing about business, or it's written too much about business, there is nothing about spirituality. This book is a perfect balance because with my 3.5 decades of experience in helping organizations turn around and make profits actually, and having a spiritual background myself of more than 30 years, I understand how to mix both and bring it to the table where one doesn't compromise with the other. I hope it answers your question.
Extremely true, Mr. Prakash. It's only when you have walked in the shoes of both the different genres, because the minute I saw this title, I felt like there are two ends of the spectrum. And imagine finding the in between pathway where, as you rightly pointed out, yes, as a CEO with the entire business on your shoulders, you also find the balance between the sweet spot between spirituality where you are at calm, that ensures you get the maximum out of yourself only when you are aligned in the right place. The vibes around you is going to be right. That is going to transpire, that's going to spill over to your entire company. So along with all the academic accolades, knowing how to balance what's happening in life is so very important. And I'm sure your book is going to give us that midway where we get to understand how to balance both. So, one more. A very curious question I always had in mind, and today, having the opportunity to meet an author directly, I would like to ask. This is completely away from your book, but I would like to know, do you also get mind blocks when you're writing? This is something like, as an ordinary person, I would love to know from an author's point of view.
Incidentally, this is my 11th book. The first book I wrote way back in 1998. And my second book was published in India by the number one publisher then in the world, Tata McGraw-Hill. And each one of these books is a journey. And if I told you that I didn't have blocks, I'll be lying. I'll be absolutely lying to you that I didn't have blocks. Creative blocks are part of the game. And the moment you have a block is when some of the concepts I've explained in the book, I practice it myself. I do rejuvenation, I do what is known as a mental cleansing, or I just meditate, and then you just let go, and finally it happens. And I've, in fact, one of the questions, one of the CEOs asked me as part of this book, where he also asked something similar, and I've answered in a similar way. creative blocks are part of the game, and I'm not a machine. None of us are. It's not that I sit there and I'm able to write or type it out in one shot. Not at all. This book actually took about 4.5 months for me to finish. And after that, when Westland, which is an Amazon company in India, they saw the title of the book and they read through the manuscript. They were so amazed. They said that please do not talk about even offering to anybody else. We want to pick it up. And though there were other publishers who had approached, but I said I have already spoken, so I'm not going to speak to anyone else. And when they ran through it, the editorial team was extremely positive in to such an extent they said initially that we are going to have a lot of edits and cuts and changes and whatever. And it was so nice of them that they read through and they said that you seem to have touched or ticked all the boxes except for grammar and spell checks and alignment issues. There is almost not much to be done. Of course, they did give certain beautiful fine tuning to be done here and there in helping me to change the English language presentation, things like that. But creative blocks, yes, they have been there, but I have my own way of overcoming, and I don't want to share all the surprises here. And this book is something which should have something in your hand when you read it, right? In fact, we spoke together with the publisher, and they're so happy to
Yeah.
extend bulk discounts. So many people are ready to buy for corporates who want to buy and give it to the potential CEOs, the CXOs, the next level organizational executives. So I am really excited when the book is going to hit the market in a few days from now. I'm very sure that I'm really privileged that you're one of the first I'm speaking to, and it does give me a good canvas to draw my thoughts other than what I put in the book. It really is.
Oh, one more pointer I have, Mr. Prakash, before we wind up this interesting topic. I have usually there, I mean, lovely philosophical sayings, no complaints, no regrets, but I always have a huge regret. Anytime I walk into a bookshop, I look upon the hundreds and thousands of books. I'm like, oh my God, so many books and so little time. And I always have this somewhere, I have a phobia. What if I miss out on some amazing books because I didn't know that I should reach out? So I am sure your book is going to be such a gem. So for thousands of people out there who might not know, why should I reach out for the spiritual CEO book when there are lots of books out there on a counter? What would you like to say?
All I can say is that it's like a baby which is owned by the mother. The mother can never say that some other baby is better. But I do say that for personal business and all-round success, and to give that X factor to a CEO's growth, and to give a 360-degree view of beyond just the material aspect in terms of the people around you, the things which are much beyond, in which we have actually born into, but we never understood all along. This will be sort of a game changer. This, in fact, I call it as my magnum opus out of the 11. This I would surely put it as almost my number one output as of date. And this is something that I can literally bet the money on. And cost-wise, it's almost nothing. Today, you go out for a dinner, you can buy 5 sets of these books in one cost of one single dinner. I'm very sure that people understand, as you rightly put, the value of the book. And in terms of return on investment, I just can't even put a figure to it. I mean, how can you put a return on investment figure on a value? So it's going to be a game changer. That much I can tell you for sure.
I'm pretty excited. I'm just waiting to lay my hands on it because being the founder of a company, I have so many questions, which I keep pondering, and my regret or not regret, I think I veer more towards spirituality. And yes, my mentor, Mr. Paul Abraham, would always tell me, please remember, you're running a business and not an NGO. So learn to balance both. I'm sure this book is going to give me the key to balance both because I always veer towards helping out. My clients are everything in the world to me, and I sort of lack business acumen. So I think both is going to come. And thank you so much, Mr. Prakash Seshadri. I am waiting for your magnum opus book and 11th book. How many of us in this world dream of just penning one book before we die? And I'm sure you're still in the initial stages. So wishing you all the very best, waiting to lay my hands on your book, and God bless for this great venture of yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Parimila. It indeed is a great occasion for me to talk with you, and I am very sure that this book will bring such a change in the thinking pattern of some of the executives. Many times we believe that maybe what would this book do? And that one book, when we lay our hands on, is something which is going to change your life, and this book is going to be that. I will soon be catching up with you through this book when the book reaches you. I'll be talking to you through the book, because good books, you don't read it, the author talks to you through the book. I look forward to the time when this book is going to be in your hand, where I'm going to talk to you through this book. Thanks a lot for this session. It has been really a great interaction talking to you. Thanks a lot. My pleasure talking to you.